Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the. I'm your host, Rico Muhammad. Going to be actually, I've already got co-host is right there. Chuck Snap. Good evening, Chuck.
Well, good evening, Rico. I got to say, you're breaking up a little bit down there. I don't. You're just every third word is. Say a sentence.
Okay, let me try.
Hi, everybody. Rico will be right back on Rates and Lanes. We've got a great show for you this evening. There he is. He's back.
All right. Hopefully that fixed it.
Oh, you fixed it. Whatever it was, you are a tech guru.
I don't know about that part.
Watch this show because they're going to steal you.
But I tell you what, ladies and gentlemen, I'm excited for tonight's show. Last week, we talked about getting your truck prepared for winter and everything like that, and we talked about insurance claims from a standpoint of if you have an accident, making sure that you talk to someone at your insurance company and all of that stuff. Well, tonight we having a follow-up. We're going to be delving a little bit deeper down the rabbit hole, and we're going to be going into the insurance aspect of as far as cargo claims are concerned. If you have an issue, and we've kind of got a who's who in the insurance industry to help us out to kind of help break this thing down and demystify it for you, so it's not so intimidating. In case you ever happen to come across this situation, you find yourself in this situation, you kind of have hopefully brings a little bit more. You'll be a little bit more familiar with the process, and like I say, it won't be as intimidating to you, because that's what we want to do. We want to try to help you get more tools in your tool belt and make it comfortable for you. These things that may seem a little complex, and things that you may not want to deal with, things that you may be afraid of, that you think may be a hindrance or an impediment to your business. If you have to utilize them, I know nobody usually don't want to use their insurance. They get a little anxiety when it comes to using the insurance and things of that nature. But tonight, hopefully we can demystify a little bit of that. And Chuck, so who do we all have coming on with us tonight?
Oh, we've got the insurance heavyweights, really, and it's not just cargo claims; it's any insurance claim. If you do have a wreck, these guys, there's a claim involved, and these guys will walk you through. These are the who's who when it comes to truck insurance. We got Les Titus, and we've got Cliff Cameron, and of course we have Professor Truck Insurance. Tommy Ruke is here as well. Welcome, gentlemen. It's an honor for Rico and I to have you three on, especially together, because we want to talk all about what to do if you do have a claim, whether it's a freight claim or you've done some damage to a car or truck, or you're involved in any sort of thing. There's going to be a claim. What do we do to protect ourselves? How do we handle it?
So we're gonna. I guess we'll start it out with. We'll start out with Les. If you don't mind, Les jumping on board first. We're talking about if someone finds themselves in an accident and it maybe have a rollover accident or something that nature, and it made the cargo be all damaged. How does that process work out?
Well, on a cargo claim, it's critical that you understand what you're carrying, and that you have a way to contact dispatch with the company that dispatch you to immediately get out, especially if you got a refrigerated cargo, to get out to preserve that cargo, especially if in fact the cargo has temperature gauges on it and items in there that require that they be at a certain temperature the entire trip. Because if you let it fall below a certain temperature, the entire load will be rejected, and you've got a whole different mess on your hands. The number one thing about that, of course, is just making sure you maintain your reefer units and you do the normal maintenance on them, because you die in this insurance world because you'll lead a claim because you didn't maintain it. You don't have the record showing that you maintain your reefers.
Document your maintenance. Everything you do, even if you do it yourself, If you change your own oil on your reefer, you change the belts, whatever, make sure you have to anyways, legally, but you just hit a really good point. Everything you do to that reefer, you've got to document.
It's critical because they'll deny your claim quickly if, in fact, you got that provision in your policy that says that a reefer claim where you don't have it show evidence of have been maintained, they'll deny the claim, and you've got that load that you've got to take care of yourself. And so that's critical that you take care of that and that you do your maintenance and, like I say, document it so you have the records to prove it when something happens.
That's very interesting. I want to ask a question really quickly about, because when you said that, that made my mind immediately jump to, because I run reefers. That's all I run is reefer breakdown insurance. How does that, what the typical process with reefer breakdown insurance?
Well, that's what I was just mentioning. If you don't show that you've maintained your reefer and then you get a load and the reefer breaks down, you're very likely to have no coverage for that because you didn't maintain it. There's a requirement that you maintain it, that you have. And the reason you maintain it because of the fact, and you had breaks down because of the fact that you have inadequate freon in it or whatever the maintenance requirements are. There's provision in your policy that give them clear authority to deny your claim. And that's the last thing you want.
Now, let me ask you a question. I've got a question because this happens quite a bit, especially when it's produce season somewhere, where you have somebody that rents a refrigerated trailer. And they can rent it from, who knows, they rent it from big guy, little guy, doesn't matter. And that unit breaks down. Now, when how does an owner operator or small carrier or big carrier, even doesn't even matter if it was Werner out of Omaha, they rent a trailer from somebody down the road in Omaha or Lincoln, and they've got a load on, and it something happens to it, and the load it perishes as a result. What happens then?
Well, you go back to the same thing. You get what you pay for. If you go and find someone that doesn't have documentation that they could share with you that their units have been maintained, the guy's giving you a real great rate. He's giving that rate for a reason, that he hasn't maintained his truck. Same like this, the tires, all of those things are something that you want to make sure when you go out and rent something from people that you don't know, you got to do your homework and make sure that it's been maintained. The tires are all in great shape, that they're not retreaded tires. You got to make sure that the reefers have been maintained. Don't just take a trailer without checking it out.
That's such a critical point you just said. Because a lot of times I think there's a misconception in this industry. Tires are one thing, you can check tires, and we do use, a lot of people use retreads, especially up here in Canada, and we've had good luck. That's another story. But on the reefers themselves, I think a lot of carriers, big and small, are under the assumption that when they rent a reefer, that the responsibility for that reefer isn't theirs because they're renting it. It's not theirs. But really what you're saying is if you've rented it and it's your policy, it is your responsibility.
You've got a responsibility to your customer to get their goods from place to place, regardless of what other factors are involved. So it's critical that you make sure that you rent quality equipment, because you're stuck out on the roadway, flat tire. How much money does a flat tire cost you?
Oh my God. You know what? It costs you a minimum on a good day, 4 hours by the time you mess around.
And that's the thing that you can't afford to have in your evaluation of your whole business and your whole business practices. You can't have subpar equipment because it'll cost you at some point, and it'll be at the most critical point in the world. In your world, in Canada, in snow and ice, you're out there, your whole life is at risk. Plus you open the door for an accident that's your fault now, and your equipment is contributed to all that. And that's where Cliff comes in. Cliff goes out there and says, this thing happens because of the fact that there are tires on this thing are bad. or the brakes not right. All of those things have to be up to star. So therefore, you got to make sure you know who you're renting from.
100%.
I think the key, if you can hear me, is that you got to report all the claims as soon as possible. I caution you, both of you talking about Rico and all, in insurance coverages, you can buy policies that do not have or some of the provisions in it with spoilage and this kind of stuff. If you're hauling particularly food goods, you got to be real careful the car you buy. Don't buy it just because of buy the pages, buy the cargo. You got to ask coverage if the temperature changes, if it spoils, if it's rejected. You got to have that answer for your agent, and the agent who helps you will help you walk through that, Rico. But I think also the important part, you got to report all the claims. Liability is once we have the claim that gets in people's hands like Cliff, who can then sort things out and decide what we need to do. And that helps us get the more information you got early, the better off you are, aren't you, Cliff, in this area?
Most of my claims are casualty claims, and but today, a claim that would have been considered $1 million claim are now looking at, and the sooner, and the pendulum is swung back in injury. It used to be years back, 20 years ago, they called up the empathy. The doctor started saying, look, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. Our in-paying claims 10 times what we were looking at a few years ago. Exact 6,000 fatals in the trucking business each year. I spent 15 years on a bad case every week. TBIs, traumatic brain injuries, spine, any major loss now is $1 million claim.
Yeah.
A head injury that we go back out and look at when a guy hits in a car, he just gets bumped. Everybody thinks he's okay. He hits his head on the side of the glass. He calls it a traumatic. And the next thing, you've got somebody looking for $10 million from the company. What's the point of going back? Don't expect, inspect. You've got to start looking at these small claims that you've got to report them. You've got to get somebody else out there looking at them. You've got to change your expectations. You got to call your agent and say, I had a wreck, but they were transported, they weren't transported. Are you going to send me somebody out? I'm okay. And if lawsuits are in, if I'm a truck, I'm going to get sued if it has any merit at all. So what do we do to get out there, bore you with the details of the physics? But what I teach and talk about around the country, my drivers, I've sat down across the table with 3,000 drivers in 30 years. They're worried they're going to lose their house or their truck, or and their wives are the biggest problem. Oh my God! And nobody's calling them back. The driver has to be proactive. Pick up the phone, call his agent, and say, report this claim, and get on top of it. Don't let me. And then if you don't hear back the next day, say, what are you doing? Get somebody. Don't expect, inspect. Somebody. What does that do for you? Most truck accidents are not our fault.
Right.
Most truck accidents. And why do we do that? Because we didn't get there early enough information. We didn't gather people that are around there. You know, somebody walks up to you and says, thank you very much. It wasn't your fault. Thank you very much. And you let them walk away. When you decide that you know as a witness, take the photo of their car. Get a license plate. You can't at least get the car and get their plate. They're critically, and most people will tell the truth. They'll still be on the side of the truck if it wasn't his fault. Be proactive. Get out of your dues. Call 911. Don't call the dispatcher. It just doesn't feel right. But that's what all my do. Call the dispatcher. They're going to talk to the dispatcher while somebody's in the car hurting. Maybe an accident stand later. You didn't call 911. 911. I want to look in this back. Upload in the person. Don't do that.
What?
Second thing,
What? Cliff, you're breaking up a little bit.
You have to press your refresh button.
Yeah, hit your refresh button, Cliff, and we'll see if that should hopefully clear it up.
I'd like to, Chuck and Rico, we've had this discussion with Cliff and Les not being a part of this, but it's so important to understand the advantage of having event recorders in your trucks.
Oh my God!
Have the cameras, both front and thing. The more data that people like Cliff have, the better off you are at the claim here. And those things, if you're doing everything right, you got to prove it. And pictures prove this stuff. So why not have documentation that I'm doing things right? And so this is a big here that these couple here, Cliff cannot settle or handle a claim accurately unless he has all the facts possible. And the event recorders give him facts that can turn any case around for him and save money, because he'd rather, if it's wrong, Cliff, your attitude, if it's wrong, write a check and settle it and take care of it. If it's right, if our trucker's in the right, then you decide how far to fight. That's part of it, Cliff.
Well, Tommy, you're right on the money there. Can you know that the statistics right now say that 75% of the wrecks the trucks are involved in are the fault of cars. I think that once we have event recorders in all the trucks, I think you're going to see that number go to 90% of the wrecks are not the truck's fault.
You guys
Cliff,
hear me
come
now?
back in. I think we can hear you now. Yeah.
Yes or no?
It's a little bit of a delay, Cliff. Hit your refresh button on your browser.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, that's good, but you might want to hit your refresh button. It should take you back out and bring you right back in. While we waiting on, okay, it seemed like that might have worked right there.
Yeah, I think it. Listen, when you're talking in cameras, and we're not talking about. I do a lot of very big over the country, but I also work with a lot of the small carriers, and the two is real simple. The big fleets will provide a lot of drive cam and looking at my driver. Frankly, I don't like cameras that look at my driver. But it is what it is, guys. But I do like my cameras. You don't have to go to drive cam and spend a fortune. You can stop at the truck just in a little event recorder for $50, $75, $100. But you get a little camera in the front of this truck looking out that you can reach over and just the button and capture what you have. Changes my life dramatically when I have to go. I teach the physics first. I have to know what happened in an accident. So the first man flying in, sit down and I'll ask you, get some pictures. Yeah, I'd have just a few. I don't want pictures of somebody in the car, and I don't want pictures of hurt people going around the car as fast as he can. And guys, give me some pictures of skid marks. It's a little act. Walk to the back of your truck and take some pictures down the road where you came from. Cars takes you 2 minutes. Nobody cares. Do it before the trooper gets away and stop. The second thing you do is off to the cop and contact him. The third thing you do while you're there is look for witnesses. You guys, these great points. I really believe he's right. 90% of these truck accidents are not our fault. But we lose 50, 60, 75% of them because we didn't corroborate your story, driver. All you've got nowadays, you call dispatch instead of having. Okay, you got to get out. You got to be proactive. You got to call your agent. You got to there. And if you see somebody show up and nobody calls you, make some phone. Pay a lot. You pay a fortune nowadays. In the last 7, 8 years, you're 3 to 4 times that you were 4 years, 5 years, 6 years. So it's insane. and it keeps going up. Inspect, call somebody, send me some help, be proactive. Expectations of your agent, strong and hard. Don't call him up and say, please. Call him back somebody to correct what we're doing. Little wreck are now 10 and $20. That kills you on your premium next year. Fight these claims. When you get an at fault, go and try to get to your DOT guys moved and changed. Work with your insurance company on making sure they understand what a driver takes. Show that was preventable or non-preventable. Don't let that jump on you. It's a situation, but it really is. You're smart. You're out there driving that truck, pick a call, look for witnesses, talk to the trooper, and get me some pictures. And life completely. That's it.
You know what? You've said it beautifully. Those are the things that we have to do, and there's a lot of work to be done. You want to avoid. Whoever's got the background, everybody in the background, you can put your phone on mute unless you're making a statement. It might be easier for our listeners. I don't know who's got all the noise in the background. There we go.
I think we got. Tommy, just put your hand up when you're ready to speak. I'm gonna mute you real quick. But I got a different question. Chuck, you wanted to follow up on that before we move on?
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, I had a question moving away from accidents. When you have a situation when you pull into a dock, say there's no accident, and you pull into a dock and they unload you. You're at a grocery warehouse or whatever. Going back to the reefer scenario, and you get some rejected. They reject the load. They may reject a part of the load, or they reject the entire load. How should you handle a situation like that when it comes to a cargo claim with the insurance?
Well, the number one thing you want to make sure of is that they've got accurate readings of the equipment. They're rejecting it for a reason, and what you've got to do is this is your one chance to say that there's an error on your part, and go back and say, let's go back and check each and every one of these before you allow them to reject your load, because you probably don't get paid if they reject your load. You probably gonna get sued if you don't reject the load, because they're gonna make you eat the load. So it's critical that you push back on that rejecting of the load, and let's go through this and let's walk through it. Find somebody that's reasonable to walk back through it and make sure that you're getting the proper information and the proper opportunity to show that your load is in compliance with what the bill of lading that you had when you took the load.
Well, nobody's got some. What happens in a case where you have signed for 24 skids of blueberries, for example, and okay, I'm just going to use that as an example, and that's what you've signed for at the shipper, and you counted. There's 24 skids of blueberries, and you pulp them, and temperature's all good. That's no problem, and off you go. And you go to the other coast. You go to the opposite coast, and you go deliver them, and they go, well, in 26, got 26 skids, but we got to count them. You signed for 26 skids. You didn't sign for 2,600 boxes of blueberries. How does that work? How does that work when you're trying to put a claim in where, all of a sudden they're making you responsible for case count when that wasn't what you signed for? And you never counted them because you signed for 26 skids. And then they're trying to all of a sudden count. And let's say there were 40 skids short or 40 boxes short, and they signed the bill 40 boxes of blueberries short, because I've seen this. And the poor truck driver never, that's not like the shipper saying, you better count, make sure we're putting we're putting 100 boxes on each skid.
Chuck, the thing that Cliff mentioned about taking a few minutes making a skid mark, this is where the driver's got to help. First thing is, if they pick it up and it's a drop and hook situation and it's sealed, they got to put on their receipt, shipper, load, and count. What you hear, the same thing that Cliff talked about with the cameras, take a camera of one of those skillets and count them. This is what we have now. If they're at the dock and allowed to be there to oversee this, then that's the way you want to verify what's there. Temperature control is important. How many times does the driver take a thermostat and stick it in the sealed milk carton on the place I had and realize that it's on the wrong temperature? Then they need to note that and not pick up the load there. So there's a lot of things before the item gets on the trailer that the driver can do to help themselves once there. Getting back to what Les and Cliff both had, more documentation you have, the better off you are. So the only way I can suggest, Chuck, in that thing is take enough time to make sure, don't count every skid, but make sure when you sign it, I sign for X skids, not X boxes. Don't put X boxes, but skids, and take a picture of a skid there, and you can count those, then you have those kind of things. The other thing I suggest, if you're hauling anything that has to be consumed by humans or animals in bulk, the things that you talked about, you've got to look at. There's policies out there that specialize in the Safety Modernization Food Act here, right. and you got to not buy a cheaper policy, guys. You can save $500 now and cost you your whole business by not having the right policy. There's policies out there that address the Food Modernization Act. And you need to shop that and go to the agent. If you're a reefer operation, if your agent doesn't know what the Safety Food Modernization Act is, go to another agent. Because
Touche.
You got the wrong one in that part of it. It's very simple in that. And so these are things that the driver that we try to teach when I teach agents to tell our insurers to do those kind of things, just to be able to prepare in case something happens on that thing. And Rocco, your comment is if it gets rejected, the thing you have to do with it is determine is it can be put back in the marketplace. And under the Food Modernization Act, it cannot be put back until somebody signs off on it that says it can be put back in the marketplace. And all of a sudden, you turn in a partial load into a total loss, and that's the problem you have with this. So it's preparing before, and as Les says, have the documentation, have the trailer with a thermocane, a temperature control on the dash if at all possible. If you're going to specialize in this marketplace, then you got to spend extra money to make sure your trailers are able to quantify the temperature in it all the time. The driver read those things, the driver trained to take that, and your cargo policy will cover that loss if it happens that way. And not all cargo policy will do that.
That's a good question. Good question that someone just brought up, and this is something, especially with the pandemic and everything. A lot of shippers and receivers both have kind of gone to the situation where they if you don't work for the facility, you can't come on the dock, so you don't get to see the loading process or the unloading process. You may not have an opportunity to actually poke anything until after it's on the trailer and you pull away from the dock. Is there any advice on how we should handle situations of that nature when you don't know if in the middle of the trailer you got a hot pallet on, so to speak?
Well, I'd say Linda asked that question, and I'll leave here. But the thing about it is to go back and make sure on the receipt you say shipper load and count and note the seal number on the trailer, and somebody sign off at the end it was still sealed. That's the only, and you have that. Unless you were going to say something, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
The same thing, Tommy. I would make sure that the shipper put a seal on it, so that you can show that the seal has not been broken when you deliver the load. And also on the document, on the bill of lading, have them sign the shipping document that the driver was not allowed to inspect the load as it was loaded on the truck to protect yourself. Anything you can do to protect yourself, because sometimes you just have to be aggressive and say, I need to see what's on my truck. Now, you might be loading drugs on here. I don't know what you're putting on my truck. And you want to make sure that you speak up for yourself, but also if they insist you cannot, then have them seal the load or put their own lock on it that they opened at the other end, and then you have a document that they sign saying the driver was not allowed to inspect the shipment of the loading of this vehicle, and that way it puts pressure on them because now it's on them if in fact there's a problem because you didn't have anything to do with the loading.
Because in the Carmack amendment that would govern this, the shipper has to prove the damages and what's there. So if it's sealed at both ends, as Les said, and take a picture of the seal too as well, that number. Everybody's got a camera now. The more documentation, the better off you are.
So I got another scenario that someone asked about as well. They had a multi-stop load. They were at Walmart and they were being unloaded with the load of ice cream. and Walmart was not in any particular hurry that day to unload their portion of the stop, and he had a problem when he got to the final destination with the ice cream being a little soft, and they wanted to reject it because, but now Walmart had him held up, and he didn't understand why Walmart, what kind of defense does he have in that kind of situation?
Well, I think the one thing you have to know is you have to know your customers, and you have to know that you're gonna run into this problem at Walmart. And if you got a refrigerated load, you're running a risk every time of eating that entire load. If you don't actually, if you've got places that don't have that urgency, it's almost like you can't take the load. I'd rather not take a load if I'm a shipper, if I'm a trucker, than take one I know that I'm gonna have problems throughout because I've got to go 3 different stops. It's refrigerated. And I know that I'm gonna have to sit, and there's a very good chance while it's unloading, the temperature in my reefer is gonna go down below a certain level, which gonna reject the whole load. It's flawed with disaster.
Yeah, I agree.
Go back to your point about the being short on boxes, pallet loads, and no way of knowing it, and especially when they offload it. This is abstract out there. Look at the weight of your truck. Every trailer's weights blueberries, and I've just had this where we lost a load, and we're trying to figure out. So if I have a pallet, if I have 20 or 30 pallets, and I'm short 4 completely packed blueberries, I'm going to be under hundreds of pounds of what 80,000 pounds, and when we get weighed, we're at 79,000. If all of a sudden I'm looking at a load that everybody's saying I'm short a few pallets, those pallets, and you weigh them, and I've got plenty. When I have an accident, I lose everything else. It's just a thought in the back of your mind. If somebody comes up and say, "No, I can't be short pallets and weigh this much," so just keep weight in the back of your mind. That kind of problem.
Good. Another great point. Now, can a shipper, if there is a freight claim, can the shipper hold payment legally against that carrier?
Tommy, you want to?
Yeah, what they have, Chuck, you know this, what you build in the contract, and this is the dangerous part of it, where you're going to have a mistake. We're talking about anomaly here, but this happens all the time, where the cargo policy does not satisfy the shipper, and the broker gets it here in the middle, and the broker has to make goods for the shipper, and then the shipper, the broker then comes back to the motor carrier, and the contract that most brokers have with the motor carrier says anything I owe you, even from previous trips, I can withhold to satisfy this claim. And then the other part of this is that now that motor carriers has their receivables factored, and now they're getting not paid by the broker, and therefore the factoring company is going after them for the unpaid amount that they did factor. So this is what's here. And the biggest problem that we have in this is not only the things that we're talking about here is the cargo coverage isn't right, but they're hauling something that was excluded, or in this marketplace with inflation, the cargo's worth more than it used to be. 100,000 doesn't touch it today, 250. And this gets it back again, that my recommendation on this is when you sign on the bill of lading or you sign your contract, all I'm going to be responsible for is the amount of insurance you require me to have. because what happens is if the trucker or the broker requires $100,000 and there's $200,000 worth of goods on the car and your truck, you're still off with the full $200,000 on a CarMax, unless you have a release bill of lading, even though the shipper doesn't require you or the broker doesn't require you to have that limit. This is the danger that I'm finding. I'm facting. The reason I'm giving these facts is I'm helping two agents right now handling this type of a claim as we do today. But that's a problem too. I don't know, Les, if you got involved in many of this, or Cliff, if you get involved in many of this with the limits that way. But this is a concern today in today's marketplace.
They're not going to just go away if, in fact, you have a load that's worth 200, you only have 100,000 average. They're going to get their money somewhere, and you're being the lowest one on the totem pole. They're going to come after you. So it's up to the individual owner, operator, to make sure he knows that he's adequately insured. Like you said earlier, you can't save $500 on a policy and buy a cheaper policy that doesn't give you coverage you need to run your business, where you don't have to worry about things like this that you can't control. Because there are going to be things that happen to you. There will be situations you're put in that really put you at odds to where you can't make a living, and you're subject to lose your truck and your livelihood.
Yeah, we've all seen carriers lose their business because of a serious freight claim.
That was going to be my question. So if you have a really serious cargo claim and you happen to get dropped by a particular insurance carrier, what's the likelihood of you being able to get insurance through someone else?
Cargo's easier to that than auto liability. That depends on what caused the crash, the claim. Rico, cargo has a lot of variance in it as far as the commodities hauled and this kind of stuff. And so the more information you have on these anomalies, you can still get coverage somewhere as long as you corrected what happened in this time with the equipment that Cliff is talking about, quality of equipment and this kind of stuff, Rico. So it's a little different than liability. It doesn't live with you because each cargo can stand on its own. A lot of times the insured, because of CarMax, the insured didn't even cause the crash. The four-wheeler caused the crash. But in this case, the motor carrier is responsible for repairing that load, even though they didn't cause any damage there. It was somebody else who caused them to turn that truck over, and we have to pay for it under CarMax, under the federal law. So this is an anomaly here that you can explain out if you understand the mechanics of cargo coverage.
There's an awful lot of exclusions as far as on refrigerated trailers, especially, and unfortunately, there's a lot of ignorance out there, and especially we've got a lot of new entrants, and these and a lot of these new entrants are actually seasoned veterans that drove for years for other companies, and in the last 3 years, they saw an opportunity to get in, get their own authority. And a lot of them were owner-operator or lease operators, and they were leased on with, a number of carriers, and decided, well, you know what, it's time for me to strike it on my own. And they didn't worry about insurance, a lot of them, because that's one of the things that the company they were leased on with provided. And they go out and as Tommy and I know only too well, some of them deal with insurance brokers or that aren't knowledgeable, or worse, the worst truck insurance broker I know of is the insurance company that has you deal direct with them rather than and not go through a broker. That's even worse than a bad broker. So I don't suggest, for our listeners, you want to stay way away from not using a broker, but for God's sake, I don't care if the broker that you want to use is your brother or next door neighbor or your pastor's son or whatever, doesn't matter. You've got to deal with somebody that their business is trucking because it's so specific. And there's a lot of exclusions when it comes to reefers, and people get into do all the time. What are the main exclusions that the insurance companies don't want to cover? And you see those ones all the time that get people into trouble on a refrigerated trailer.
I'm going to pass this to Les in a second, but let me say the insurance company can cover everything that they know about because cargo is something that can be modified to cover everything. What the exclusion is, they didn't anticipate it, that the insured was going to haul it when they wrote the policy. So the first thing is the insured has to tell the broker everything they're hauling or intend to haul. And the broker's got to tell the insured, if you're hauling this type of cargo, you've got a problem or you've got something else involved in it. That's where it's got to start. Les, you might want to add part of that, or Cliff, you all got some thoughts on that.
Tommy, you're 100% correct. Is you can't start out hauling dry goods and all of a sudden start hauling refrigerated goods. There's a substantial exposure to an insurance company, the difference between those two types of hauling. So you got to make sure that you're honest with your agent, and when your business changes, because you'll find that once you get started, what you started out as 5 years ago, you see other opportunities, and now you're doing other things. And so you've got to make sure that you're clear with what you're doing, so that you might say, well, if I don't tell them, I'll save a few bucks. But if you don't tell them and you have a problem, you're going to lose a lot more than a few bucks that you save on insurance by not telling them.
You're right, except that unfortunately, Les, there seems to be an awful lot of assumptions made by inexperienced carriers, that they assume that they are insured for something. You know what? I heard of one that was, he just wasn't insured to haul plants and flowers. That for some reason, he just wasn't. And he was, it was Mother's Day or one of the holidays, and he had a reefer down in Florida, and he picked up a load of flowers, and something happened, and the load got cooked or got frozen. I think it got frozen, and he passed it to the insurance company, and they said, "Well, you're not insured. It says right in your policy, you're not insured to haul flowers." And he didn't look. Okay, he assumed.
This is why they've got to communicate and have an agent. Obviously, we train our agents, and Cliff and Les have taught our programs we train. The people that have gone through our program, the Motor Carriers Insurance Education Program, with the TRS designation, has been told this. I'm not saying every agent does this, but they're told to make sure you read every policy. I think I've shared this example with you that I learned earlier, Chuck. The first risk I ever wrote was a beer company. I used to sell them trucks. Fort Myers. And the first policy I wrote for cargo excluded alcoholic beverages for that beer company. So day one, I learned to read the policy all the way through it. And so that's I learned the first commercial policy I ever wrote, to read the policy and then talk to the insured. I just took a boilerplate policy and threw it on there. The problem that we have for a lot of your smaller motor carriers is that they're buying a policy for cargo just for a certificate of insurance. You can't do that. You don't buy a car based on how much it weighs. You buy a car based on all the features. We sell features and the features in the policy. Simple note, the more words you have beyond "we cover you for your legal liability." Once you get beyond that phrase, everything else takes something away. Right, as a condition. So the more pages you have, the more problems you might have in this. And Cliff, you have the same problem when they insure smaller motor carriers, don't you? Where to protect their assets, that you want to have them have it in a corporation at least, and have as few assets as possible in the transportation companies. And because you reach a situation sometime on most of all of your big claims, we'll offer you policy limits, and the plaintiff doesn't take it because they think they can get more assets from the motor carrier. And you deal with this all the time, do you not, Cliff?
It's way more frequent today for the drivers. Certainly the big companies, they're looking. I mean, I saw one, and this was in a publication. The excess carriers on some of these folks are now getting scared to death. Fatals. This was this year in Texas, that they go to trial. They wrote a check for $140 million. Okay. So let's go back to the small fleet. The guy that's got 5 trucks, and he's got a garage in the back, and he's got a $750 or $1 million policy. Most way in the past 5 years ago, this guy who's driving down the road now, he because he doesn't have another $1 million worth of land and he doesn't have $1 million, they would leave him alone. Guys, listen, these lawyers with each other now and teaching how to make a reputation is getting beyond the $1 million. They want to take the $1 million and the guy. They want to they don't care that he doesn't have just $1 million. They don't say, I got a $50 million claim against small truck guy this program. I want to get a claim against him. I want to be the guy that puts on the billboard $1 million judgment. I only got $1 million. He doesn't tell that part of the story. Going down the road, thinks he's bulletproof. He's not. He gets a judgment against his place. He's got to make sure that he's protected. And let me belabor a point just for a second. What's killing me in big cases, negligent hiring, negligent entrustment, negligent retention, and negligent supervision. I just left one yesterday. There's going to be a multi-million TBI case on a small fleet. And I looked at the guy and I said, I don't have one. I know the guy. I don't need a DQ file. You're sitting there, you just took your bulletproof vest off. Now you're in for punitive damages. Drug test. You took your vest off. You're not bulletproof. If you don't do tox tests, even yourself, you've got to go back, look at that FMCSA. Say, if you put your buddy in a truck, if you've known him all your life, you still better have an applicant checks, and you better have that file set up, or they're going to come get you. You case into $1 million case and 2 years of litigation, and you're giving testimony, and they're going to look at every document you have. Dot the I's, cross the T, go to the FMCSA. There's only 7 major points in there. Please, guys, get those $100,000 cases into being $1 million cases. Are you exposed beyond the policy? This nasty guy on the billboard wants a name for himself. He wants to take you down. I don't belabor that point, but that's where we're losing these cases today.
We have to be smart.
Punitive damages in a lot of places are not insurable even. In South Carolina they are, but some states they're not.
They're not insurable. They fall back on. They don't take the $1 million and they go after the guy for the punies. Right. So Mr. Truck Driver's hammered with the punies because I don't cover it.
You know, when we wonder why we have a shortage of truck drivers. Construction, usually construction guys putting up drywall, you never hear of them having punitive damages, that are awarded against somebody's house. It doesn't happen.
Nor do you hear them being drug tested.
Yeah.
No.
Before they can go to work hanging drywall.
Well,
talking about driver shortage.
But, going to jail, and owners of companies are now getting negligent homicide charges. The owner, driver, because he didn't drug test his driver, because he put him out there because he knows him in a truck, and he didn't drug test him, and he killed somebody, and guess both who's going to jail.
Yeah.
The new world out there.
Yeah. You know what? You've got the law's there. You know what? If you want to be in this game, obey the bloody law. It's not that. Yeah, it's hard, but it's the way. If you want to be in this business, that's the rules. If you don't,
here's what's Chuck. 10 years just tried our cases. The lawyer on the other side did what he does, and we do what. Today they deal with each other. Guess who elects the district attorney? The local plaintiff firm. Guess who goes to that plaintiff and say, please pursue criminal charges, and you get the driver to plead, and you get the owner. I'm dead in the case. The game is changing against my little guys going down the road. Think they're not. I've got a lot of people going to jail nowadays. Okay, and on stuff that they invited to go to jail. The one I'm working on right now is she's going to be able to do this. It's major bodily harm can turn into a felony. You've got to don't you ride back when you get home. Open that DQ drawer. It's just time consuming. Sorry, guys.
I got one. I'm looking at the time, and I'm throwing this one out there. Not necessarily a cargo claim per se, but definitely. We're in modern times. Everybody has cell phones. Everybody's on social media. One of the biggest things that I see out here nowadays, a lot of people is out here recording everything. You know what I'm saying? They're doing a lot of stuff trying to get their social media up, going down the road, driving, recording themselves, doing whatever, whoever, whatever. If you own any type of social media and you got any friends in the industry, I'm pretty sure everybody has seen those videos with people just recording themselves doing absolutely crazy stuff behind the video and posting it out there on social media. If you happen to be in a situation like that where you have a driver or something like that and they happen to get themselves into an accident, how much is that with that in place?
We can barely hear. Can you mute Tommy again?
Hey,
No offense, Tom. We love you, but
Okay.
That's it.
go ahead. Much better.
So yeah, if you're in a situation where people, like I say, social media, that we're doing all this recording everything that we do, we want to put out, people out there, Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, all of the different social media applications. But as a driver, there's a difference, in my opinion, my humble estimation. There's a different level that we have to hold ourselves to, and I think that when you out there putting some of the things that they're out there putting on social media while they're doing their job, and it may not be doing it in the most safest fashion, how much does that play into if you happen to get into a situation where you happen to have an accident and you just so happen to be recording yourself or going live, so to speak, on one of these social media applications?
That is one of the biggest problems that I'm dealing with today across the week somewhere in the country. But it's not just my fatals. I had a driver that I sat with, and tell you the state, about 3 weeks ago, killed a young lady. We looked at the video that was caught from a store. We could see him going down. He never looked up. 8 seconds at 50 miles an hour is 2 football fields back. And I looked at his history, and he had some problems with his temper. He was arguing with his wife. Okay, he never looked up. He never even the light turned red. He never saw it. The first thing, and this is small town. I met with the officer. There was the chief and 5 guys. Barney Fife. It was nobody would. Everybody. The first thing they want is my driver's cell phone. If you need a cell phone that's in the last 5 years, it'll tell me where you were. It'll tell me what you were doing. You want to erase. It'll be in a hidden folder, and I am making sure that now Gage. I want a big case. A girl about 2 months ago in the States. Mom was doing exactly that. I looked on TikTok. I didn't look. She's on TikTok, holding the camera at her face, and she goes and runs into our truck. So it's another. It is the biggest problem. You need to listen. If it's a wreck, I'm going to look for the cell phones. You can take that cell phone, and a year later, I can go back in there and find what's in there. Don't do yourself on the and the juries will hate you for it. You possibly can, and the district attorney will prosecute prosecute you for it. Every single after it just to make a name for himself to prove it. You raised the hottest issue I have to mitigate these big accidents all the time. I got to stop, and it's just suicide, economic or
Go ahead,
otherwise.
Les.
Cliff,
Yeah,
look,
it's definitely a huge issue. Like I say, I see it all the time, especially on social media and stuff with drivers recording themselves going live and stuff like that. And I've always I've already spoke about it. Like, hey, they've already issued these laws about distracted driving, and why would you put yourself in a situation to make yourself a target by doing? I mean, you may not even you may not have an accident at the time that you're doing it, but I think that may set a precedence if you ever happen to be in an accident and you've got stuff like that on your social media. How far they, like you say, how far they'll go back. They'll say that may say this particular person just has a propensity for just doing this all the time, even though they may not have been doing it at the time of an accident or something may have occurred, but they just kind of they have all these videos up of themselves doing silly stuff like that.
Let me tell you one other quick newest biggest problem. I thought I would know this from the beginning of time, but I've missed it. Group telephone calls that all these drivers get on. And they all get on 12 people on the call. What's happening is telephone. The plaintiff and look at a situation where it was clearly distracted driving. The driver just was on the phone. He was doing something different. All of a sudden, I got 12 witnesses that work that will testify. They have to testify. They'll be subpoenaed. All your buddies are going to get subpoenaed if you're going down on a group call. I'm not going to stop you from doing it. You've been doing it for a very long time. But you're going to bring all 12 of you into the courtroom, and all of you are going to have to talk and having an accident. If you're going to do it, oh my God, please be careful and love your buddies. So heads up, one of you has an accident, you all go to court.
Wow.
Rico,
scary.
one quick thing, Rico, before we leave.
Absolutely.
Chuck talked about earlier about doing the right thing. The thing that you guys have to remember is that everybody on the road has a camera. Everybody's filming all kinds of things. It's critical that you don't lie to your insurance company, to your boss about what happened. Put it out there so they can actually go out and attack the problem, because somebody has video of what you did from odd places, and Cliff is notorious for finding that stuff. And so it's critical that you are upfront and that you do tell the truth, because every time he goes out on the phone, Cliff and I worked together for 25 years, and every time he goes out, my driver's lying to me, which creates a problem for him, because he's spending half his damn time out there trying to figure out what the lie is that he's told me, because I know it's a lie.
Right.
And so be honest, and do what Chuck says, do the right thing, do what Tommy says. Buy the policy to cover what you need so you can relax and not have to worry about that. Maintain your trucks. Take care of your business and treat it like a business.
That's right.
That's the biggest thing. Tommy, you want to chime in on this one?
I was going to say, the truck driver, like no other business, lives in a glass house. Everything they do is recordable, and a lot of stuff that the CSA scores and all are published for public view. And every insurance company knows everything they have, and they do this research. So about this, I agree totally with Les and Cliff both and you all about the social media. This is one of the worst things you do. It's a habit here, because it even takes time to post those things that run down the highway. It's going to inflame a jury here. And so that would be my comment here. But I would want to end to one of my favorite things, and these gentlemen, all three of the ones you have here, have been in my programs before. We're trying to preach to the trucking industry that they need to do business with retail agents who understand their business. And the people who have gone through our program do that. the TRS designations involved in that part of it. So I would strongly recommend that they check those things. Rico, you know my contact information. Chuck, you know my contact information. I can get you in touch with people like Les and Cliff if you get in trouble. In fact, Chuck called me the other day, about a year ago, Chuck, and we got you in touch with a lawyer that you needed, within a couple hours that helped you walk through some things. So this is the advantage of doing business here. And we appreciate your opportunity to let them know this so we can let them be involved with people who can help them do right. But as Les summed it up, the right trucks, the right driver training, understand doing it all right, understand the regs and rules, like Cliff on boarding a driver. There's no shortcuts today in this marketplace, folks. It's too transparent. Everything is.
Well, gentlemen, I appreciate you guys for taking time out of your schedule to come on and join us. I'm looking at the time. We have reached that time. It absolutely flies by. I'm not sure if we even just barely scratched the surface on a few of the topics that we probably wanted to get into. So we definitely want to try to maybe schedule another time to get you guys back on and up and on board with us. But before we get out of here, I'd like to give each of you an opportunity, if you want to give out your contact information, how people can find you. The floor is yours. We'll start with Les. If you want to, we'll go Les, Cliff, and then we'll come back to Tommy.
My company is CPR Insurance Group, and you can type cprins.com and on the website and find us. You can find me there. There's a portal where you can send me an email if you have a question. Cliff and I have been together since 1998. Is the first time we had on a claim together. And Cliff used to be on a private plane flying all over the country to try to get there before the report was written because he knew the report's going to be wrong.
Wow.
All right. So Cliff, if you want to let the people know how they can find you or how they can get in contact with you, the floor is yours.
My name's Cliff. 214-632-4000. If you're in trouble, give me a call. I'm not looking for any new business or any new clients at all. I've spent 30 years of my life taking care of. If I take care of my driver, I take care of my company. If I take care of the company, I take care. So drivers are important to me. If you have a question, I'll try to answer you if I can. So
thank you.
We appreciate it once again. All right, Tommy, let the good people know. We know you're not selling anything, but let the people know how they can find you.
It's simply Tommy, TOMMY at MCIEF.org. Tommy at MCIEF.org. And we're here to help this. All we do is try to provide information and help. And I started this 10 years ago, and it's grown, Chuck and Cliff and Les. It's become a big factor in the marketplace, and I'm proud of that. It's only because we are doing the right stuff.
Chuck, can I?
All right, Chuck.
Get my.
We're doing it all.
Certainly.
Thanks.
If anybody needs to get hold of me, you can reach me.
You want to give your email address?
Yeah.
Chuck at Traffic.
Hold on a minute, Chuck. Hold on a second. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Cliff. Go ahead.
Cameron, CAMERON at KCDRIVE.com. Thanks.
All right. All right. We appreciate it again, Cliff. Go. All right, Chuck. We apologize.
Chuck at traffics.com. If anybody needs anything, please reach out. If you need help, you want to get set up at a traffic's office, I know a bunch of good people, and I'll put you in touch with them. If I can help you with your business, any aspect of it, please reach out. Leave me your phone number. I want to thank our esteemed guests. You guys, you're fantastic. Really appreciate your insight. We do need to do another show, I think, very soon on distracted driving. It seems to be a real problem out there.
It is a problem.
We got to get in front of it.
Absolutely. Yeah, like I said, for Les, Cliff, and Tommy, and from behalf of Chuck and myself, we definitely appreciate you guys once again for taking time out, especially right now doing I know everybody's at home enjoying the family and everything, getting ready for Thanksgiving and all that good stuff. So we appreciate you for taking time out of your schedule to come on and spend some time with us here on the Racing Lanes podcast. For everybody else that's out there on the road, stay safe, stay healthy, keep it in between the mustard and the mayonnaise, and we'll talk at your same time, same place next week. God bless.
Catch on the
guys.
flip flop. God bless and happy
God bless you.
Thanksgiving,
Good night.
everybody. Stay safe. Be safe.
God bless.
Take care.